I actually love this stuff, and my goal is for everybody here who wants to walk out being able to do this. It's very simple. And if you already have the basics and you just want to make it a little bit easier for yourself, then my goal is to do that too. But I would like to hear from you too as to what you most want to get out of here so we can make sure that that happens. Hi. What do you guys want to leave here being able to do?
Manage a list of vendors.
Okay, perfect.
I just wanted to find out what everybody else is doing and share lessons learned. We use a city CRM database.
Oh, you do?
It's
Okay.
heavily automated. And
All right.
we did Excel for years, and just it was hard to collaborate in real time when we had a bunch of people playing Excel at the same time.
Sure. Okay, well, David knows a lot about that, and I know some about that of what different states are doing and stuff.
Yeah, so
which for the most part is little or nothing. That's why we're doing this workshop. I mean, in terms of tracking a list, much less a database.
Has anyone ever heard of Organizer's Database?
I have not.
ODB. It's a freeware, and it's created by activists, nonprofit, and so it may be something we want to. Because I remember in earlier seminars like this, that's what they were promoting. It's
what is it called?
Organizer's Database. ODB. If you do, anyone can Google it. They can find out.
Okay, so you guys are free to check that out. One thing, I mean, a couple of things I really like about Excel are, one, a lot of people have access to it, and two, it has really robust help system. The problem with a lot of open source is that they don't have support. You know, they don't have extensive documentation where you can just look up online how to do something. They don't have people you can call. And it's great for people who are really computer savvy, but for people who aren't, you know, it's a problem. Yes,
yeah, I was just going to add to that. Because I've talked to candidates or campaigns or whatnot that want something that's more robust like that, or even state parties. The thing is, it's just like the most important thing is not to wait to start tracking your data. So, I mean, yeah, Excel is, you know, nowhere near like the level of what, you know, a large organization might use, but
right.
It's still really, really useful to start tracking the data immediately, getting it in there so it's not getting lost. There's some state parties that are still doing things almost like pencil and paper.
Right. I think that's a very good point. Yeah, the longer you wait, the more you're going to have to corral little pieces of napkins and whatnot and try to put it in the database, and that's a problem. You can start with this and you can always scale up or change to something else. And you can always take the data out of Excel, you know, and put it pretty much anywhere you want. Okay, so what is a database? Why should you use one? It can mean both an organized collection of data, as in the GPUS donor database. Can also mean a database management system, which in this case would be Excel. It could be ODB or City CRM or whatever, which holds and organizes your data. And depending on which system you use, it's going to have some effect on what you can do with that data. Good morning. I'm just getting started.
Just one more.
Okay, you're going to want to see the screen over here, probably.
No, we're not.
No, you're just observing?
I'm just helping.
Okay, all right. So, so when your data is organized properly in Excel, you'll be able to add records for new people. You'll be able to update the existing people you have, should they change their phone number or address or whatever it might be. You can find people who match a certain criteria. They might live in a certain zip code or a certain city or have donated a certain amount of money. You'll be able to easily find that stuff. So those are all things you really have to do if you're running any kind of an organization. You've got to be able to easily and quickly find that information and probably share it among different people in your organization. So if I create an Excel or similar programs, it's called a spreadsheet. And always remember, you can click on the help button if you forget how to do something. So right over here, let me see if I can make this bigger. Okay, so see over here, here's the help button. So I can click on here. And you can just type in a question here, somewhere in here. So let's say I wanted to say, or you can click down here, they have different topics. If I wanted to know how to build a chart, I can just click on here, creating charts, formatting charts. It's going to give me basically a step-by-step. Usually they have something called a quick start or an overview that'll run you through the whole process from start to finish, which might be what you want, or you might want a specific question be answered, and then you can just type that in there. Okay, very good. We're just getting started. There you go. Okay, so. Okay, so what you want to do is you're going to set up a file for your contacts. Okay, so you would just open up Excel like so, and you basically have a blank thing here, and you just type a few things and then save it. Very important to always save. Every time you think of it, save. You never know what's going to happen. These are called columns, A, B, C, D, etc. And each column holds one piece of data, okay, that you want to track. I'm going to give you like 11 pieces of the basic information that everybody needs to track. And then as you get more sophisticated or you get more engaged with your people, you can create more columns to track that information, but you're going to want to add them to the end so that you don't move where the columns are now, because it'll make it much harder to update. And if you start getting past, you know, I don't know, maybe a dozen or 20 columns, that's when Excel starts to lose viability. That's when you need to go to more of a what's called a relational database. And we actually, at GPUS, we use Salsa, DIA, to track our donors. And since David started, what, just more than a year ago?
Less than a year and a half, yeah, between a year and a half, yeah.
Somewhere in there. We've had it for a while, but David's done a lot to really make it a lot more functional and useful. So we can maybe talk a little bit about that.
We were using it for our constant contact, like all of our email blasts, and now we're also actively using it as our primary database for donors and everything. So it's not just like an email repository, it's
right.
fully functional.
And a lot of people do use it for both. And
yeah.
there are other databases that are more directly designed to use for fundraising. But for our purposes, I think it's worked pretty well. And the good thing also about it is that we have the ability to let our state parties use Salsa kind of under our license as a chapter.
We're working on it.
Oh, we're working on it. We're not quite there yet.
I don't have a state in there yet, but I've got.
But we have the capability.
We have the capability, and it's
right.
sort of just making sure that everything.
There's a hand over there.
I would love to get in on that. I've used Salsa before. I worked with Marty Glickman at greenchange.org.
Yeah.
Yeah, I would love to be able to do like synchronizing between national and state.
Okay.
Yes, that's something we really want to do too.
Sharing it.
And also it means you wouldn't have to pay to use it, at least up to a certain level, which I think most of us are far from reaching in terms of numbers of contacts that we're using.
It's something we're really looking into. It's when I first sort of thought that the biggest obstacle is just looking at where state parties currently are, which is not having almost any sort of. It would be too much for them. You're not going to be overwhelmed. But if you've used Salsa before, that's fantastic.
Yeah, and you could just slide it.
Yeah.
So you guys connect.
Okay.
Yeah, that's kind of why we're doing this. You have to start with, you have to crawl before you can walk. You've got to know how to use Excel or some spreadsheet program before you can go on to the relational database software. But we really want to get state parties using that and make it so much easier to share data and so much easier for you to track it and do the things that you want to do. Okay, thank you for that. All right, so to set up a column, all you need to do is put a label in the top cell. Each little box here is called a cell. So you just click in there and you start typing. And I'm going to type in here, first name. You always want to separate first name and last name. Why? Because you might want to sort by last name. And if you don't have it in its own cell, you're not going to be able to do that. Okay, and then the next one's usually email. And then There's phone. You could separate cell phone and work phone. I mean, we really recommend getting people cell phones because they're less likely to change when people move. You know, and so many people are just going to cell phone only anyway. What I do in my database at work is I have a column just called phone, and that's for a number that I don't know if it's a cell phone or a home phone. It's just, I got the number somewhere. So that's one thing you can do, but you certainly don't have to. All right, cell phone, home phone. Address 1 would be your house number, okay? And address 2 would be your apartment number. If you live in an area where there's a lot of apartments, you definitely want to keep that separate. It's just if you wind up doing mailing labels or something, it's just a lot easier to have it separate. Also with some like big apartment buildings, one set of floors might be in one district and the other in another district. Electorally, it's really goofy. But that is an issue. City, state, zip. And then I would say member status, and then I would say donor status, okay? So however you track membership in your state, whether it's that they belong to a local, or that they're a donor, or that they're a registered member, you would want to track that in here. And if you have both, you know, active members and registered members, you'd want to separate those probably. And I recommend for something like this where it's on or off, it's yes or no, that you use a binary field. 1 means that they meet the criteria, 0 means they don't. And you just do that because it's easier to count than the people who meet the criteria if you're adding. Okay, who didn't get a handout? Yes, David.
I'll wait for the handout, but
Okay.
I was going to make a suggestion of an additional column, which I think is really important.
Okay.
Right in column A, and instead of having your first column be first name or last name,
Okay.
Make it record number.
Yes. Yes. Very good.
And it, you know, I'm actually, and just to keep it, you can start at 1. I sometimes like starting at 10,001, and then so you sort of have a unique number for every single person, and this makes it a lot easier. You know, as your list grows, maybe you have a few hundred people on there, all of a sudden someone's on there twice, and it's just nice to be able to know, okay, this is the data I have for record number, this is the data I have for this one, do they match, do they not match? And then, this is not necessary, but this is an advanced thing, and usually when your list gets really large, like several hundred people. But for address, I actually start breaking out the street number and the street name as their own separate field. So I have the full combined address, because that's useful for mailings. But breaking out the street number and street name is really good for deduplication and seeing where you've got duplicate records.
That's true.
Okay. So it's
and,
not.
And like our
it's
Board
not
of Elections
yeah.
does that as well.
Oh yeah. I mean,
So,
they break out everything, the street suffix.
Right.
You know, it's more of an advanced thing. You don't need it when you're first starting, but at some point you'll want to do deduplication based on the address, and then you've got to sort of go back and parse that out. So.
Yeah, that's a good point. Yes, sir.
One other thing, you should keep zip codes as a text column and not as a number.
Yeah.
Yes.
In New England, we
a
have
lot
a
of
leading
zeros
zero.
starting. Yes, it's a real problem.
And also figure out if you're going to have zip be one field and that can or cannot include the 4-digit suffix.
+4, yes.
Or if you're going to have the +4 be its own separate field, and then also if it is, make that a text field as well.
Yes.
So.
Okay, I'll just stick that in there right now. I'll call it +4. Oh, and so to add a column, wherever you want to do it, it's very easy. You would just click on the column next to where you want to add the column. Then you're going to right-click, insert, voila. Okay, so zip +4, and then if we're going to add the ID number, and that really is, I can't believe I forgot that, David. That's incredibly important for any kind of database. You need a unique number for each record. Otherwise, you're really going to run into trouble, and it helps a lot for deduplication. And it's just good. I mean, if you have, you know, somebody who's your third record named David Sachs, and then down the road, there's a record number 330 named David Sachs. You know that that's the more recent one, and you can see how you can put them together. So we'll call that.
And then also, if you're ever upgrading to that, more robust relational database, it just makes it super easy to have the ID number in there.
Right, it can create them, but then at least you'll have them. And also I should note, you want to be careful with this first column, column A, because if you hide it, sometimes you can't get it to come back. Or you have to go through a lot of machinations. I don't know why it does that, it's just a little quirk of Excel. So if you don't want to see what's in this column, you're better off just kind of shrinking it until it's really small rather than hiding it. Yes, sir.
Can I suggest another couple of columns, congressional district, legislative district,
Sure.
so that we know to activate people?
There you go. By district, yes, that's very good. Whatever district, it might be city council or whatever district it is, but you certainly would have to label which one it is. If you have registered members, or you just get lists of voters from the Board of Election, it's going to have a lot of those numbers. Okay, good. So we have now set up some columns. So this is the information we want to track, and it's good to take a few minutes when you start and really think about what you put in there, because you can add later, but it gets more complicated. So it's best to think about, what do I really want to track to start with, and put it in there. Okay. Any other questions about columns? No, you saw how to add them, deleting them, the same thing. Okay, so now the question becomes, how do I enter contacts into my file? Each row will contain all the information for one person. Okay, column is one piece of data, row is one person. Technically, you could do different things, but that's the way most people use a spreadsheet. Okay, so let's say I'm the first donor, the first member of the party. You're just going to click into each cell to type in there, and I can tab over, or I could just click into the next cell to add whatever I want to add in there. Okay, now I have kind of a long email address. aaronyoung521@yahoo.com. Now, do you see how that seems to go over into the next column? It doesn't really. It just looks that way. But obviously, we want to keep it all in the same column, so the easiest way to do that is if you just go here in between the two cells that seem to be running into each other, and if I put my cursor right between these cells,
You need to hit enter, you're still in that.
Yeah.
say what?
Yeah.
Oh, thank you, okay. So now I get this little bar with two arrows pointing either way, and if I just double click on that, see it opens up the cell to the width of the cell. Morning. Just going through my cell. Anybody else missing a handout? Everyone's good? Okay. David, when are we done here? 10:15?
I think so, yes.
I thought it said 10:30.
I should know these things, no question about that.
10:30.
Okay, oh good, so we got plenty of time. Okay. Interesting. The worst thing is when you plan to do something at the end and you don't get there, so I'm just trying to keep on track. So I want to go through this stuff fairly quickly, but not too quickly. Just make sure that everybody's on board here, and then we can address some of the other questions and things that people have brought up or might bring up. Okay, phone numbers. Now, this is how I like to enter phone numbers with dashes. You can enter them kind of any way you want, with parentheses or just all run together. Or spaces. There's several different things you can do here. Now, the main reason that you use Excel is if you're doing something with numbers. Any kind of a spreadsheet format, it's because you're using that format, it's because you're using numbers, and you're going to want to add them up or subtract them or do some kind of math with the numbers at some point. If you're just creating a document, you want to use more of a document program, Word or something like that. If you want to do a presentation with a lot of pictures and graphics, then you want to use a graphics program. This is about numbers. So that being said, there's a lot of different ways that they allow you to format numbers in Excel. So let's say I want to format this column. I'm going to right-click over here, and I'm going to go to where it says Format Cells. And then everything in this cell is going to look the same way. Okay, now, this is the number category. For example, if this were where you were tracking donations, you could click on currency. You could tell it how many decimal places you want. You can say if you want a $sign. You can say if you want a comma after the 1,000. In this case, we want to do a phone number, and that's under what's called special. Under special, see here it says phone number. And if I do that, should have put some parentheses in there. I wonder why I didn't do that, maybe because I have spaces in there. There. Okay, so I had it all run together and it put in the parentheses and the hyphen format. Okay. Address. Always use the two state codes for the state. And also just keep in mind, whenever you're entering data, you've got to always enter it in the same format or you're not going to be able to sort by that data. If in some cases I had the apartment number under address and in other cases I had it under address too, then if I want to separate them out later, it's not going to work. So anybody that you have entering data, they need to be a detail-oriented kind of person. And it's good to encourage people to go slowly. It's easier to get it in there right the first time than to try to clean it up afterward. Okay? It's best not to try to do it for hours on end because you'll just lose your mind. You know, if you have to keep track of data, and I do this for the Brooklyn party, I just do a little bit at a time. I get 3 or 5 people that come through the database, through the website, and then I enter them in. Because it's when you have too much and you're trying to rush through it that you create trouble for yourself.
Yeah.
All right. So now we have the zip code. So let's say I type in like a Boston zip code, one of these that start with 0. Now I go away from here, the 0 disappears. Very maddening. There's a couple of things you can do. I can go to my format cells and special and click on zip code. And it'll put that 0 back in there, but then it may get lost again. That happens. So how would I make this text?
Choose the text.
I can't make it text from here.
Yeah.
Oh,
There.
duh. All right, I tried to make it general. All right, because you're never going to want to add up. See, it doesn't work.
No, now you got to put in the leading 0.
Oh, not putting the 0. Gotcha. All right. There. Because you're never going to want to add up zip codes. You know, there's never a time when you're going to want to add them up and come up with some big number. So that's why it's text. And it's going to give you this little green corner, which is basically telling you there's something I don't like about how it's formatted. Then you get the little exclamation mark and it says number stored as text. That's okay. That's what you want. And it will still, in some cases you'll find a number stored as text and you can still tell it, in this case, treat it like a number if you want to sort by numbers. But that's just fine. All right. Member. Again, if they are a member, you put in a 1. If they're not, you would put in a 0. And the same with donor. Now you could, if you wanted to put in here, have a column for donor amount, for under 200, or you know, something like that you want to track. But in Excel, you just don't want to get into a million columns. So I wouldn't get into a whole lot of depth here. You could put in the date most recently donated. You know, there's a number of things that you might want now we have our row, and if we have more people, we can just go to the next row and start typing in more people. Okay, any other questions about rows and entering in people? No? Put it down as a person.
Kind of memorized.
No, I don't, you know? I got you on my story myself. So I don't need to know your-
773-557-9411.
Okay. I used to live in Chicago, that's why I still have 7. All right, so I'm just gonna leave the rest of it.
But a big mistake now. You put the spaces in, and it now is a different format as the one above it.
Yes, you're right, that was dumb. All right. So that I didn't have to go to sort again, it knows that that column I want to have formatted as phone numbers, so it's just doing that. Okay, good. So now let's say I want to sort this data. There may be one thing about Microsoft products is that it has a lot of different ways to do the same thing. And what I've always done is I find something that works for me and then I just do that. And then sometimes I'm talking to other people and they show me there's another way, perhaps a better way to do the same thing. You know, that's fine. So I'm just showing you the way that I do it. If somebody else wants to pipe up, you know, and has discovered another way, a better way, that's fine, and let us know. That's just something about them. So this little cell here, that's like the intersection of the rows and the columns, if you click on that, it's going to select the whole document. So if you want to sort, that's what you want to do, have everything selected. So then I can go up to data and sort. And then I'm going to tell it what I want to sort by. It already knows that my data has headers. That is, I have a name for each column, so it knows what each column is. Sometimes that is off, and then it's not really going to know how to sort anything. So you want to click on my data has headers. Okay, great. So let's say I want to sort by last name. I can do A to Z. I can do Z to A. I can do custom. And now let's put David where he belongs alphabetically in front of me.
One thing about sorting,
Yeah.
you really only have to select one cell within your data list before you go to your sort command.
Like
It
this.
doesn't matter, any cell within what Excel recognizes as the data list, and it will know to sort that same set of
Okay,
data.
oh, that's cool.
That's, I remember from Lotus 1, 2, 3, you had to be very specific about what data you were selecting.
Perhaps, I never really learned Lotus 1, 2, 3, although that was like the first spreadsheet, right?
Yes.
Back in the 90s. Yeah. All right, so good, so that's simpler. I mean, there are times though I found when you'll try to sort something and it'll tell you there's data outside your sorting area.
Right.
So I don't know why it does that.
Excel is good enough so that if you do have data several columns to the right, or if you have it anywhere below, which you don't want to do anyway,
Right,
and including, you don't want to put a row of totals or anything like that.
right.
And then just to point out something, I don't know if it's not that complicated or counterintuitive, but my number is 2, and that is my ID number now in this database. It doesn't mean that I always need to be in the second row of the database. So you can enter a whole bunch of people, and then you're like, and enter a fresh number for everyone, and then you're like, but I really would like it sorted like this, you know. That's why it's nice to have that ID number. It can be out of order. It's unique to that record. It's not designating which row in the database it's in.
No, this is just telling me this is just the number that belongs to Dave. So, and I could go back and sort by ID number, and then the largest numbers would be the most recently added people, if that's what I wanted to look at. Maybe just check the last few people I added and make sure I did something or whatever. That's what it's for. There you go.
Cool.
There you go. Okay, so once you've gotten this far, I mean, you got yourself, a database. You've got columns, you've got rows. All you've got to do is put more people in, and you're set. You can sort.
Nice.
Yeah.
I want to make a comment. Like, I forget who it was that brought up like congressional district as a good field to have. My least favorite field of all time in any database is notes.
Yes,
people are always adding in a notes column or comments, or they'll think of something else and it's just this wildly free text field where they can type in anything and you end up getting a full paragraph in
Or
one
more.
cell. Yeah, and you know, and especially because I do phone banking, I like getting away from that as much as possible. It's better to think of, you know, 5 new fields that really want to track all the data you want to track and make it a simple piece of information. If there's a piece of information you're typing into notes or comments, think about how you can transform that into a field. And Karen said, you know, once you get to 20 columns or something like that, it starts to lose its feasibility. I think you can go a lot more. I've gotten to like, you know, when you get to around like 80, then it's when it starts to lose its feasibility. But I mean, it's really,
I think there's a lot of people who would not.
I know, but
yes,
really,
it's a matter of taste.
it's generally better though, I think, to create more columns, more fields for a specific piece of data than to just start free entering the text into
If
the
it's in notes, you're not going to be able to use it, to find it.
Yeah, it's going to be so, as
Yes.
your database grows, it'll be so time consuming to go through. I mean, I've seen stuff in notes fields that have, you know, there's no consistency between what's written for one person and what's written in another one. Like, this person's a student here, and this person was really rude to me on the phone. And it's like, well, that's not, you're not even tracking the same kind of thing in the same field. So if you want to know if someone's a student, or their occupation or employer,
Make it a column.
or do not call, have that being its own binary field, like, you know, just as you would for member or donor, do not mail, do not email. As you start to think of things, it's sort of fun to think of fields and start tracking them for everyone in your database.
Yes,
So.
that's a good point.
Okay.
It seems easier to put things in notes, especially if it relates to something sort of personal, like, yeah, they were rude, or they hung up on me, or, you know.
Make a rating system for, you know, how supportive they are then. And
Yes.
that's better than.
That's better than putting something in notes that, you know, you're just not going to be
Yes,
able to
hang on.
sort or
And
search for it or
I
anything,
will,
yeah.
Sorry for coming in late, but
work
I
until 10:30.
started in on
Yeah.
database programs such as Paradox and things like that, where you could put in a lot of detail into text sections. But it seems like everybody's going to spreadsheets now.
Yes.
Oh,
I think, you know, people just find,
well, Bill
especially
Ritter's
when
here.
you
Maybe
get
we can straighten that out.
more records, it's just much more usable
Yeah,
if you
he's in
have a discrete piece of information, one to
Oh,
each column. Because then you can sort by it, you can pull out just those people.
Filtering.
Yes. You know, and David's right, and it's a very good point. Most information you would put in notes, you can convert into a piece of information. Like, I work for a union. We use a rating system for people very heavily, you know, what level of support they are. You know, and we have very distinct meanings for that. One is somebody who, you know, not only comes to meetings, but actively, like, turns people out, brings new people in, gets people to do things, stuff like that. A 2 is somebody who comes to meetings and they're supportive, but they're not the mover and shaker so much. A 3 is somebody who's not totally negative, but it's kind of iffy. A 4 is somebody who hates unions. You know, that's just an example. Yes?
I'm not from the US. Yes, I come from the Green Party of Canada.
Oh, welcome.
And I came to this group because I wanted to hear what you do, but
Okay.
also to explain on how we try to organize ourselves. And some of the
Okay.
lessons that we learned about how we use our database.
Okay,
and
great.
what we
We're
do for
gonna
funding.
talk
But
about sharing best practices a little bit at the end. So I'm really glad you're here. So we definitely want to hear from you. So what we're doing in this part is we're just kind of, this is kind of a very basic training in database concept and spreadsheets and how we track things, and then we're going to go on to the other. Okay. It's also important, I guess I should add parenthetically, that I think a lot of state parties have basically one person who tracks, who is like the manager of their lists. In Illinois, you have a membership steward, right, or you used to?
It's Phil.
It's Phil.
Yeah.
It's,
Yeah.
everything's Phil. Okay. I shouldn't say that, but it is best to have one person kind of overseeing your database. They don't necessarily have to be the only person that inputs data, but they definitely need to closely oversee anybody else who's you know, inputting data. A lot of people feel like that's a great thing to give an intern to do, but you better make sure it actually isn't. It's a better thing to trust to more of a trusted and close member. Wouldn't you agree? If it is an intern, you've got to make very sure that A, they're a detail-oriented kind of person. To me, that's number one. Some people just can't do this kind of work, and they shouldn't. But other people, they like it, they're very suited to it. Sometimes it's a great thing to have somebody who's like, you know, they don't like going out and meeting strangers, but this is a really important function for the party. So if they're the kind of person who likes to sit behind a computer by themselves, and they like to make sure that everything is right, you know, this is a beautiful job to give them or to have them involved in.
And is there any way, I'm relatively not that very educated on software, quote unquote, and I noticed that there's online databases. Beyond just emailing this to a friend or emailing this to someone, are there, so that security is at an optimum for a party?
Right.
That instead of at someone's house and someone's computer crashes and this
Right, which is kind of like having it in
toast.
somebody's file folder.
Is there like an offline cloud-based solution for database that we can use, or?
Well, I'm going to show you what is probably the most simple and basic one. And again, you know, people can correct me when we get into more of the best practices. If there's other things you do, you can tell us and share with us. In our party, for a number of things, we use Google Docs. And you can set the level of Google Docs security at a different point, depending on how secure you want it to be. It isn't really the best thing for like a party database long term.
No, because that person quits and cancels their Google account or gets angry, and then, you know, well, I'm not going to share the database anymore, and just puts a firewall up.
Yes. But I'm just in the interest of people who are just getting started, I'm going to show you how to do that.
Sure.
And then I'm sure there are other, you know, cloud-based things you could do. I mean, in New York we have, we use a program called MailChimp, which is, you know, an email database program basically, but it's very good for that. You can see who opens your emails, you know, who clicks on things just like you would in Salsa without paying, you know, hundreds of dollars a month, which we don't have. So, you know, and it is relationship related, so we can track certain amounts of data in there. And it's free up to like 2,000 records, and then if you add more records than that, you've got to start paying. So we haven't hit that level yet, we just use it in New York City. And that's something that, you know, just anybody can have a password, they can go in there, they can enter data, they can download lists, you know, whatever they want to do.
And that's called?
MailChimp.
Awesome.
M-A-I-L-C-H-I-M-P. Yeah, it is a good program, right? We have a guy, Michael O'Neill, that you may meet here, and he is our maven of all things digital and electronic. And he just, anything you need to do, he's got a solution for it. So if you don't have somebody like that in your party, boy, they're golden. But he's the one who set us up on it. Okay, so actually my last question on here was, how do I share the data? So you could just save this, you could just save this file as an attachment, and you could email it to somebody. Or you could post it on a website from which it could be downloaded, you know, your party website or whatever. This does, however, run the risk that several people in your group will have it, and they'll have different information in each of their versions, and then things quickly get out of control. So you really want to avoid that as much as possible. You want to, at the very least, have a master version of it that's somewhere. And people could download it and use it, whoever's authorized to do that. But they shouldn't be entering data, they shouldn't be changing it. You know, somebody's got to be in charge of keeping that one master file updated. And if you're just getting started, you know, you could do it that way for a while. Have a spreadsheet on your website, have one person who's in charge of keeping the latest and greatest version up there, and maybe having it behind a password or something where only certain people are going to be able to access it. So what we can do with this is put it on Google Docs. So I'm just going to save this as test. Like we did this recently in Brooklyn because we were getting signatures for our state committee slate. We're a ballot access party now, so we have to go out among the registered Greens and get some of them to sign our petitions to be on the state committee. And then if we had contested races, we'd have a primary. So we set up a Google Docs, and it had the names of the people that we had targeted to get their signatures, who was responsible for getting their signature, whether they had brought in the signature or not, whether they had a date to pick it up or not. And that way because we had a slate of 9 people, and together we were trying to gather these 90 signatures. So it works very well for that kind of a process. All right, so let me save this. So we can just open up our Explorer. And this is on the second document that I gave you, which is called the Google Docs setup. And I know a lot of people hate Google, and I hate what Google does in China in particular. But what can you say? You know, sometimes you just have to use these things. Now, we used to use City CRM in our national office, and it just, you know, it just didn't work for us.
Oh,
Right?
that's a whole story.
Yes, it is
yeah.
a whole story, which we don't need to go into, but, and I'm sure it certainly wasn't only the fault, perhaps not even primarily the fault of the great people who have designed that.
Yeah, it wasn't the platform. That wasn't the issue.
But let's just say it didn't work with the people in the office.
No.
That's one. So here we are in Google. And you can click on sign in to sign in. You do have to sign in to do a lot of stuff. If you are not signed in, if you don't have an account with Google, you have to go to sign up. All right? And then you're going to give them your name, choose your username, which can be your email address. Doesn't have to be Gmail. It can be anything. Mine isn't. Give yourself a password, give them a birthday, gender, whatever. You don't have to give them all these things. Certainly don't have to make them your home page, but you know, they all want to try to do that.
I don't even think you need to give them your birthday or gender, honestly.
Yeah, probably not.
I think once you have your password, it's set.
Yeah.
Right. Although this does bring up a good point, I think, which is that if you want information from people, don't hesitate to ask. They may not give it to you, they don't have to give it to you, but for example, you should always ask for people's phone numbers. Because there's always going to be times when you're going to want to call them, especially if you want to turn them out for some kind of action or something on short notice. Or if it's really very urgent, because people respond to phone calls much more than they do to emails. Sometimes you have to call people. And nowadays, even if you buy phone lists or stuff, with all the cell phones and everything, it can be really hard to get somebody's phone number. It's certainly expensive, unless you get it from them directly. So, and if they're really a supporter, you know, they're going to want you to have their phone number. So, you should always ask. If they don't want to give it to you, they won't give it to you. You know, they won't put it down. It's the same with, you know, email addresses and stuff. All right.
Offhand, does anyone know if you need to create a Google account, do you have to give them your cell phone number?
No.
No.
It just get an account, and so they'll
Yeah,
pass.
It'll keep asking you because they want it, but just keep clicking skip.
Yeah,
Well-
they'll tell you if a field is required.
Right, and the one thing I've learned with Google and YouTube is if you have a cell phone number and you want to surrender it to YouTube, it may be advantageous because right now you have a 10-minute limit for your video uploads. So if you want to upload this workshop, I can now do so on YouTube with unlimited amount of time because I surrendered the cell phone number. So I'm able to upload hours of video.
That's pretty valuable.
Yeah.
Yeah, so that's how it always is in the internet world. You make a choice between how much privacy you want to surrender versus how much free stuff you want to get. So, you know, that's everybody's choice. Thank you for bringing it up. That's great. Okay, so I do have an account, so I'm going to sign in. And then I'm going to go to right here where it says Documents. And you will see here, here's the signature scorecard that I was just referring to. And here's some other documents. This little green thing means it's a spreadsheet. This little blue thing means it's more of a written document. This is what I do with David's documents when he sends me the latest version.
Oh, yeah.
Because I have on my computer I have an old version of Excel and Word, an old version of Microsoft Office, and I can't open the more recent versions, which have an X at the end.
Is that why?
That's
Okay.
why. DocX, XLSX. If you see a file like that you can't open it, it's probably because you have an older version. But I can upload those files to Google, and then I can download them, and they somehow make it into kind of a universal format so that I can open it in my old program. And someday, hopefully soon, I'll get a new one. All right, so over here I'm going to click on Owned by Me, and it actually becomes a shorter list. So these are files that I created and shared out with people. The other files that we saw on the list before, like this one, this was created by Rebecca White, and she shared it with me. Alright, so if I want to upload a file, I'm going to go here to upload, this little computer with the up arrow. Up arrow usually means upload. Let's see if you'll let me do this. Here's my file. Alright, so I can just open my file. And there it is. Okay, so now my file is saved up to Google, and I can now share it out with anyone if I want to. Click here, or do I have to open it?
You just click on test and it should open it.
Alright, so here's our little file we created, and then I'm going to go to this blue button here that says share. So here's where you set the level of privacy and control that you want to have. Here it's created a link to this file, and I can just send people this link. Who has access private? Only the people listed below can access. I can put their names in here, or what am I doing wrong?
If you click on change.
Change?
Next to private.
Ah, okay. All right, visibility options, public on the web. I could make it so that anybody on the internet could find this file. That's probably not what you want.
No.
Although, if it was, no. Anyone with the link. This is how we did it with our file. Anyone who has the link can access, no sign-in required. If you have a lot of people who are, maybe not the most computer savvy, you may not want to have them doing this anyway, but if you did, then this is what you would do. You would just send them the link, then they don't have to create a Google account, they don't have to go through all the rigmarole, all they have to do is click on the link, and there they are with the spreadsheet. Okay? Or I could say private, only people explicitly granted information can access, sign-in required. All right, let's just say it's this. Then you have the edit access. Allow anyone to edit, no sign-in required. Again, that probably is not what you want. Okay, so now I have it set up so that anyone who has the link can view. I'm the owner.
If you click on is owner though.
Yeah.
Oh, never mind.
Not there. Okay, so here I can choose from my contacts, or I can just add people. Let's say I'm going to send this to David now. Notify people via email. I can add the message. Dave, here's the file. Okay, so now we're done. The file is set up, the file is in the cloud. I've emailed David, who I want to share it with, and he'll be able to click on it and just go on from there. Yes?
That's what I was looking for, is the can edit next to my name now.
Okay, yes. So now he's set up as being connected to this document. Why do you have a turtle there?
It's my logo in Gmail. I don't know how I got my
Okay.
Gmail address and you put in my gp.org, but oh well.
That is interesting.
It knows everything about
The
me.
tentacles of Google, they know,
Yeah.
they see.
Google is our all powerful
Yeah.
reader.
Okay, so now David could go in and he could change things in that spreadsheet, which I may or may not want him to do. If I wanted to change that, I could make it just so that he can view it only. So if I want people to be able to see it, to use it, but not to change it, that's what I would select. And if you had the person who was your person and then they were moving out of state or something, they could make David now the owner of that file. If they weren't mad and storming off and wanting to make things difficult for you.
Have them do that before they get mad, and then you'll have multiple owners of it, and it can't be deleted.
Right, that's,
Yeah.
yeah, start by making multiple owners.
Yeah, that's
And then
probably the best.
no one can ever delete it.
Yes, that's very wise. Sometimes, I mean, I've been in situations where it's like, we don't even know who owns the file anymore. And then you're really screwed, because then you can't do anything
Right.
with it. All right. Good. So does anybody have any last questions on how we created the file, how we saved it, how we shared it?
Just maybe one quick
Yeah.
comment. If you're going to use Google Docs, consider using Google Docs directly, like editing actually inside
Creating
Google.
directly on Google Docs?
Just because if you're, then multiple people can actually edit the file at the same time.
Yeah.
And you'll see when somebody's in there, and you can actually see the changes they're making while you're typing in a different field.
Yeah, you'll see the cursor moving around.
Otherwise, if
Okay,
you're,
that's a good point.
if you're downloading and uploading versions, there's a chance you're gonna download, somebody else is gonna download, you're gonna upload, and they're gonna upload right over the top of you. So it's
Gotcha.
something to consider. I mean, it's not ideal because you have to be online when you're using it, but
Yes, good point. Yes.
Also, if you create a Google Docs original document, instead of using an upload, it's accessible to people with accessibility issues.
Okay.
Does Google talk to you? Does it read out what you select to sell?
No, I actually have to use another program to do it. But if it's using like a docx or an Excel, it's like, then I just get a blank document.
Okay. All right, so I don't want to go into a lot of detail on that, but I'll just kind of note how you can do that. Yes, you can go here and create a document directly. It could be a document, Word type file, spreadsheet, numbers, presentation file, a form, any number of different things. And then I could just go right into their spreadsheet. And this is very easy, you know, it's exactly like Excel, but it's just very clean and simple, your columns, rows, whatever.
And it does functions.
Oh, it does?
Yes, if you need formulas for whatever reason. Yeah.
What is that, this?
Mhm.
Aha, okay. So we're not going into formulas here, but yes, when you get a little more advanced, that's something you definitely want to use. If you want to, you could create an automatic field, for example, which would add up everything in a column, or divide it by a certain number, or stuff like that. That's what you need formulas for. Great.
the other nice thing about if you're going to use Google Docs to use it in Google is you'll see a history of all the changes that people have made. You'll know who made what change on what date, and if there was a mistake, you can go back and talk to somebody and say, did you mean this or was it something else? So it's just nice having that history. If you're just uploading files, you're just going to see a list of files and not necessarily know what changes were made.
Yes, good point.
Karen,
Yeah.
do you know if anybody has built templates already for exporting FEC or campaign finance reports? Just pulling out employer occupation and FEC stuff.
That's a good question. I don't know of anybody. Have you?
No one in our party, I don't believe. I mean, I could ask Brian what he does. Brian deals with the FEC reports instead of me, so.
Right, okay. 1 second. Hi. I am working as a treasurer now for one of our congressional candidates, and the FEC has their own software, which I have found is just a nightmare. It's a very old program, and the documentation, it just doesn't tell you, it's just completely wrong. It just doesn't tell you how to do anything. That's what I've learned. And you're supposed to be able to import and export, but that seems so difficult that I just gave up that idea, and I just decided to enter my transactions directly into the FEC software to file electronically, because it seemed like that was going to be the easiest thing in the end. But I think that's something I'd really like to see us do, because we've got people doing these things all over the country. I understand Gil Obler, who's from Massachusetts, is working on some sort of guide for treasurers to deal with those things. And I know, well, in our state, the Board of Election has trainings for treasurers where they go over the rules and stuff like that. But I imagine they don't do that nationally.
It's difficult, I believe. SALSA, which is the program we use in the national level, they're always creating, custom and built-in reports that they sort of create themselves that all their clients have access to, and they still don't even have an FEC. It tracks donations and all sorts of stuff. It doesn't even have an easy thing to export to use to upload. So.
Yeah, I know that the Democrats and Republicans, that there's commercial software that's designed to use with the FEC, and there's a lot of it. If you go on the FEC site, they have a whole list of all these vendors. But I'm sure it costs money, which, I'm sure we don't have enough of, so I didn't even look at that, quite honestly. I'm like, okay, I'm just entering into this old program, which is going to tell me to convert it into an ASCII file. Yeah. So, Isabel?
Oh.
Sorry. No, it's her turn.
Well, we already talked
Oh,
about
okay.
I was asking about Nation Builder. We use Nation Builder and our treasurer is not here, so I don't know.
In Massachusetts?
Yeah, if it has that functionality, but it is.
does.
It does,
Yes.
okay.
Yeah, I know that Jill Stein's campaign uses Nation Builder. I know that we're talking about using it for our state, but we just started a conversation about what we're going to use. I had trouble getting on Nation Builder for the Stein campaign. They had a thing where you're supposed to go on and get numbers where you can make phone calls and stuff. And I've also tried to make donations and it hasn't worked. So I don't know what it is with that site. But, okay, so I think we're done with our basic Excel training and Google Docs training. So let me just recap a couple of the basic points that we made there. I just want to make sure that they kind of sank in. Oh, well, let me make one last final point. If you are somebody who has not used Excel or a spreadsheet and you're wanting to use it, you must go on there and try to do it in the next 48 hours. Okay? Otherwise, you're going to forget everything that you learned from your charming instructor here. And you will go on and it will be as if nobody told you anything about Excel ever, if you don't do it in the next 48 hours. So please try and find a few minutes to do that. Okay, so what do we track in a column? Anybody?
You mean like name?
No, well, a column is not a field. A column is a collection of fields. But what is the one thing that goes into a column?
One piece of information.
Thank you. One piece of information. It's the same information in the column. If this column is last name, then everything in that column is somebody's last name. Okay? And what is a row?
A complete record of the contact that we're putting
Exactly.
in.
Yes, it's a complete record of the contact. All the information we're tracking for one person is in the row. Okay? And where's the, well, it's not in here. Don't forget the help button. Always click on the help button. That's why it's there if you forget how to do something, which everybody always does. Okay, good. All right, so now somebody asked about, you want to know what other states are doing. Was that the question with databases? Asher?
I don't know that that was necessarily my question.
Yeah,
but
yeah, I know. I
that's
know that's kind of close, but not exactly it. So tell me what it was. What you wanted to get out of this workshop?
Yeah, just like how to better manage a database, like deduplication and stuff like that, cleaning lists, and like how to just, I don't know, work with them effectively.
Okay, let me just track some of these questions and then we can come around. Deduplication, working more effectively. What else would we like to know about what different states are doing? Yeah.
Yeah, I'm curious about versus, the limits of a spreadsheet versus a database. Input forms that you can retrieve reports from, which may help in cleaning up duplicate efforts. It seems like spreadsheets would take a lot of programming to make that work like that versus a database.
Organizers database, ODB, if anyone
Okay.
would Google
Well, I
that.
guess,
Okay, hold on. Go ahead.
sure. A more specific question, like, so one thing, like I'm running for office right now, and so we're building a lot of new contacts that are not necessarily party members.
Mhm.
And so like syncing that list that we're building for the campaign with the state list, so like do fundraising in the future.
Okay. One question.
I can speak to that a little bit if you want me to. And once you're
Yeah. Okay. Any other questions, things were burning questions to know
Yeah.
about? Yeah.
Yeah, and I'm not sure how it's related to everything, but sending out mass emails, like from what kind of account and limits of email number, volume that you can send out and how to do that. And from, I don't know if you can do that from Google or if there's a limit on how many accounts you could send to with one
Yes,
email.
yes, yes, yes.
Okay, good. All right, so what I was thinking was maybe we could hear from our guest from Canada, because he wanted to share some stuff with us, which I'm sure we'll find all incredibly valuable. And then we can circle back around and talk about some of these other things. Is that okay? Does that sound good? Okay. Could you introduce yourself, because a lot of people weren't here when you came in.
My name is Johan Hamels, and I have been the last year and a half the Executive Director of the Green Party of Canada. But I have a long story. I come from Belgium, and I started the Green Party there in '79.
Oh, wow.
I have a lot of history and a lot of responsibility and so on. But it's all my fault. Yes, it's all my fault. But for us in Canada, our two databases that we have, it's our biggest treasure that we have. And it is something that you really, I don't know if you said that maybe in the beginning, but data about people, about supporters, about members, about voters, it's the biggest treasure that you have.
Yes.
And it is important to make it, that those databases, as big as possible. Yeah. Yes, we use CVCRM, but we have one full-time employee of the party who keeps it running and updating. But the advantage for us is that we have 308 electoral districts, of which we have close to 200 local groups, in 200 of them, and each of them have access to their part of the database.
That's fantastic.
And Civic CRM allows this.
Yeah.
Yeah, which is the biggest thing for us.
What's it called?
CVCRM. If you just do
CIVI.
CVCRM, CIVICRM.
CRM
is
stands for
content management.
Customer Relations
Yeah,
Management.
yeah.
Or I guess you could call it Contact Relations Management, CRM. There's a lot of
Yeah.
CRM systems out there. CRM is open source.
Yes.
What is
Yep.
CB?
CIVI
Yes.
Oh,
CRM.
Civi.
CRM.
It is difficult.
It
You
is.
have, when you want to work with it, we have adapted it with the person. We have someone, a programmer, and he has
You have to
reshaped
have a
it.
program.
The look of it is a little bit different. It's really Green Party. There is our logo there, and we made new things. And he even before CVCRM had certain fields, we had already those fields.
Oh, wow.
And then we got in problem because then CVCRM made those fields, and with the upload we had like the same information in two places. And once we have sent, for example, Anglophone letters to Francophone Canadians and vice versa.
Oh,
Yeah?
jeez.
So terrible. Yeah? But okay, that happened only one time.
I bet.
And you don't-
Then they
and
came
you-
and burned
and
you
you don't
down
do it
with
anymore.
Francophones.
But the most important is really to convince your local groups and your national party or your state party if you don't create the national thing. Yeah? To really make someone responsible for it, or two people responsible for it, because it is your biggest treasure. Second thing is, I think, yes, if you're extremely small, go with an Excel file. It works, and you can sort and play with it and retrieve information, great. But if you grow and your numbers become big, go to a database system. Yeah, go and you take Nation Builder if you pay a little bit, or go to CVCRM if you have someone who is really good at remaking it so it's a little bit easier for people to use it and to access it.
You can't use CiviCRM unless you have a geek who is very dedicated to your party.
Yes.
But if you do, then it's great. Then you'll have a lot of the capabilities of a relational database without having to pay for it.
And what we decided is we have one database for the whole country. And for example, the Global Greens have put all their information in one CVCRM,
Wow.
and that's organized by someone in New Zealand. And so everybody who has registered ever for a Global Greens Congress, their data is in that database. And if it is CVCRM or something else, doesn't matter. The advantage of CVCRM is for free.
Right.
And it gets better and better over the years. At this moment, it's even in different languages for us in Canada. We now use it in French and English
Oh, wow.
for our database, which is great for our Francophone members. We also made ourselves a database and we are thinking to merge that with the CVCRM, but we haven't taken that step yet.
That's a big one.
But that's a database for the voters list of Canada. The total voters list of Canada.
So you get it from the government and then you
Yes.
make your own version?
Yes. So we have the voters list and we put it in a get out the vote database, where we made, it's a website, and so someone who wants to do get out the vote or canvas, phone canvas or door knocking, and after the door knocking go on the phone, on the computer, you put all that information in that database, riding by riding. Riding is an electoral
District by
district.
district, yeah.
District by
Wow.
district. How did we win our seat in Canada? One of the things which was very important. Every district has about 70,000, 90,000 voters, and a maximum of them about up to 60, 70,000 vote.
Also
And-
very different from the US.
Yes, but, and unfortunately, less and less and less voters over the last 20 years keep voting. In the district where we had our leader running, before the election and during the election campaign, we called all the voters and we tried to identify who would support her. On election day, we used our Get Out the Vote software with more than 2,000 volunteers everywhere in Canada. Everywhere, people were volunteered just from home. They had registered before. We had a script for them. And on election day, we called from about 9 o'clock in the morning in the riding time until the evening 7 o'clock. We called 25,000 people. And we won the riding with 46% of the vote. That's what it takes to reach out to voters directly, and you can only do it if you use databases. Yeah. And if you use a database, which is in fact a software, a website type of thing that helps a volunteer to find the information of that's the voter, that's their telephone number, and they are registered as a strong green, as a weak green, or maybe as a undecided. And on election day, we have called all those three, because we knew that those undecided, most probably in vast numbers, were not decided to vote for the Conservative MP. And that even if some of them would vote for the Liberal or the Social Democrat, the NDP, a big majority of them would be tempted to vote for the Green candidate. That's what I wanted to say. I mean, for the rest, I know that the US is 10 times bigger than Canada, at least in numbers. We are bigger in territory.
Yes.
But it is, I would really, if the state parties, and that's what the Democrats do, that's what Howard Dean does in the Democratic National Committee, they have one database for the whole of the US, and everybody tips into there, and every volunteer who has done some canvas, that record is recorded there and can be reused by all of their candidates everywhere, again and again. And in fact, even if you're not there yet, that's something that I think, when I see the type of campaign, that Jill Stein has done in this primary election, I congratulate her and her team. It's fantastic. With the small resources that you have, it was very focused, it was well done, it was showing some thresholds that you wanted to reach and making them accessible for people to join into there. But keep doing that and think that about your party and make it a unified thing from coast to coast where people can tap in. And then you stop playing with Excel files in in one riding or in one electoral district. And it will ask resources, but everybody has to put those resources together to have maybe 1 or 2 persons full-time paid to keep those databases running, software-wise, or to buy it if you want to buy it. but software-wise, if you want to use CVCRM, which works. I mean, and specifically, I think at the level of the number, our database of CVCRM, we run about, we had 80,000, I think now we have more, close to 100,000 email addresses, yeah, in the whole of Canada for 33 million people. And so compare that with the US. Yeah. And we have many more contacts because we don't have from everybody an email address.
Of course.
Yeah, because not every voter that we have identified has given their email address, but we put them in because our CVCRM info we tap it in every 6 months into our database on voters list and so the easiest is if you can merge it everything. That's what the Conservatives did in Canada, and it's terrible. Yeah, because they are a machine which is unbeatable in getting their voters connected. But it is fantastic, and we use CVCRM for all our fundraising asks and so on, and it's much easier than also the local groups can use it. And that's what I wanted to say.
All right,
So
thank you very much.
Well done. I think well done with your work for this primary campaign. I was really impressed. I've seen work from the US Greens before. I haven't seen that before.
No, it hasn't been done before.
Yes,
And we're all very excited.
it's a big step
Speak a little
forward.
bit
Do what? Just 1 second.
Oh, sure.
Okay, so thank you so much for sharing that. It's really important, I think, for us to hear how Greens do it in other countries so we can have an idea of what to shoot for, and that there's so much beyond where we are at this moment. I think we really have to keep that in our minds. Let me just say, as some of you know, some of you may not, I'm the co-chair of the fundraising committee of GPUS. David is our fundraising director, our staff member. So he and I work very closely on fundraising and on these data issues. It is our goal to bring more unity between the states and GPUS in terms of fundraising and record keeping. There's a long history of not sharing. There's a long history of hostility, distrust, suspicion on the parts of all these people, which has prevented us from doing that. We've also been prevented just by technical issues and by the lack of funds to be able to buy things. But really the suspicion, I think, is the biggest one.
And give it up.
Right. It says in our bylaws, by the way, that every state party will send their list to the national party every year. It has never happened, okay?
And it's never happened vice versa. I mean, I've just been getting state lists out in the last like 3 months to different states with all the, and people are like, I've never heard of any of these people like that are donating the national party from their state. So we're finally getting that all out, open, shared across all the states and
right.
Stuff like
David, before David came a year ago, it wouldn't even have been possible even if we wanted to do it,
Yeah.
because our data was in such complete disarray. And I'm actually completing my term as chair of FunCom. I'm being termed out after 3 years, and I'm hoping that I can go on to the steering committee. So if you are a national delegate and you haven't voted yet, just let me get that in there. So yeah, 1 second.
Karen,
yes.
just to tell you, you should not feel ashamed as a party that suspicion was so big that people didn't share that information. The Liberal Party in Canada, who has governed the country for most of the years in its independence time since 1867, yeah, has started doing this in one united database only a year ago.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's wild.
Their local groups kept their information for themselves and so on, and their candidates kept the information for them and even didn't share it with their local party structure and so on and so on. Yeah.
Well, that's good to hear.
And but I would tell you, the state of the planet is so bad. Don't take it so long as the Liberals in Canada. Go and do it now.
Thank you. Yeah. So we need to do it. We need to get serious and just like get it done. But just so you know, it is in process, and David has played a huge role in that. So we are very lucky to have him, and I hope everybody will, buy him a drink or whatever he wants, because he's definitely not being paid what he deserves. And he is our fundraising director, which means that he not only manages our data, but he raises funds. He is on the phone calling people, asking for money a lot. So he is not a full-time database person. So we're limited in some of these ways. but we've made a lot of progress over the last couple of years. And I'm hoping that we will do much more. I know he sent out 30 state lists of donors, and the states are very excited to get those, and everybody found people that they had no idea were green supporters, and here they are giving money to GPUS, so those are great recruits for every state and locality. And of course, we find people on the local level that don't donate to GPUS. We've been working closely with the Stein campaign, and as she becomes the nominee, we'll be able to work more closely with her. They've already pledged to give all those donor names back to the National Party.
They already have started.
Right,
that
they've
as
already
well,
started
which is
doing
great.
that, and we know they've reached a lot of people that we haven't reached before, so that is very exciting. Okay, so I just wanted to get that in.
Okay, I just wanted to, I'm just going to come up for a minute,
Yeah.
use the whiteboard, and just address Asher's question a little bit and get into a degree more of complexity. But yeah, we're working on it with all the database stuff, and it's generally going well. Okay, it's not.
So I wanted to cover a few of these questions before we're done.
Yeah, I wanted to talk about sort of Asher's thing about
Okay.
like, you're building your list for your campaign, and you've got your state list or your local list, and deduplication and all of this, and it's sort of good, I think, to take a step back and think about, just what Karen did up there, and what really defines a full record. You've got that one row that's, each person, you think, oh, it's a person. Well, what defines a person when it comes to your database? And it's good to sort of conceptualize this out, and I'm going to we don't have much time, so I'm going to sort of skip to the answers I've defined it, and maybe someone can think of it a little bit better, but, in terms of what makes a unique person, you've got their name, we've got email, address, and phone. And that's really about it. You can have home phone and cell phone, but generally everybody has one email address, they've got one home address, and they've got one, maybe two phone numbers. And that sort of defines a person, although this can be shared with multiple people, and this can be shared with multiple people. Even this email can be shared with multiple people. There's some couples, older, less tech savvy, that share one email address between the two folks. And so it's sort of thinking through these four fields and all the different ways you can parse them and break them up. This, you've got your unique record number for each database. That's really important so your head doesn't spin off when you're dealing with all of this. But it's sort of thinking through these four fields and how they define an individual. And some rules that I've done just in the database, and this has nothing to do with salsa per se, but if I just have a name, that is useless to me. A name without any of these, without any contact information whatsoever, I purge that. There's nothing relevant about that. There's so many people with the same name in different states and all sorts of stuff. A name by itself is not useful. However, an email address just by itself, without a name or anything else, is useful. You can email somebody, you don't need to know their name, and they can receive your newsletters and everything else. And email is also a very easy and great field to deduplicate on. And even when I know these sometimes go defunct, I still keep them in there because they're so good to deduplicate on because their email addresses are so unique. So that's something to look at and think about too. Address, again, I sort of brought up earlier, so if I just have a name, I either need to have at least a name with one of these three things. Once I have at least a name and an email, a name and an address, or a name and a phone, then I've got a real contact, something I'm going to create a record for in my database. Like I said about address earlier, you just have that one address field. When you start doing, deduplication and everything, it makes it a lot easier if that address is parsed into every single constituent part. So you can deduplicate based on the street number and street name and things like that. And then same thing with phone number, you want that in the same format. And name broken into first and last, and you'll deduplicate based on phone, you'll find some duplicates, but are they just a couple with the same last name, or are they actually the same person? And first names can drive you nuts, because Bob begins with a B and Robert begins with an R, and you can get duplicate records and it's hard to find it. So it's just, these are the four fields to really think about. This is where you're doing all of your work, and this is where you're mashing things up. And then I also usually throw in, it's part of address, but because I'm working with people across all sorts of different states, I throw the state in there. It's usually a pretty solid thing. So, but if I find a name, and even if it's a really unique name, and I've got one person in Michigan and one person in California with that name, unless I have like really confirmed it that that's the same person, I treat those as separate people. And you know, over time, if I'm sending to one of them and all of a sudden their email address starts bouncing, and their mail gets sent back from sending out a mailing, and I call the phone number and it's disconnected, or it's a wrong number now because it's a new thing. Well, all of a sudden, if I'm left with just a name and no useful contact information, then I can go back and purge that contact. So that's just sort of a high-level conceptual way to start thinking through everything. You know, in terms of the tricks and stuff you want to do in Access or Excel, to the more physical process of deduplicating, that's a little bit more complex. And we definitely don't have time for that. But yeah.
I was just going to say, so we use CRM for everything in Minnesota, and one of the important fields for us is your ID in the Secretary of State's voter database.
Oh.
Because we constantly import that voter database to get their voting history.
That's great.
And updating that. So that's actually the unique ID we rely on. So if we split off a copy of the database for like a city council race, then we can import the results of that back in later to our master database and have a way to do a merge that's reliable.
What are those fields you're talking about?
Secretary of State, they'll ship you out.
The voters list.
The voter list.
Identification number.
Everybody's
ID
registered
number
to
coming
vote
from that state.
in every election they've ever voted in, and that's
It's a unique number.
So it's the voter ID number?
yeah, they
and
have a
the
unique
voting
ID they
history.
issue. Yeah.
And what's nice about that, at least what I've seen, and I can only speak to Illinois, is they already have the address fully parsed out. Although I will say this, I've seen plenty of duplicates in the voter rolls.
Yes.
They do a very bad job of purging people, which is actually fine.
And they
When
have
you-
misspellings of the
yeah.
name, and you
When-
can tell it's the same person.
When you think about the purpose of the voter database, it should hopefully be allowing as many people to vote as possible. So you're going to be really conservative in purging people's names off of there if you have a duplicate. So, but that's a great thing to match up with everything else.
Okay,
I
wait.
saw that. Oh.
So let me just address a couple of things here. I want to make sure that they don't get away from us. Somebody asked about sending out mass emails. Like I said, our guru, Michael O'Neill, selected MailChimp as our program, and I think it works extremely well. I would recommend using that. It's free, up to 2,000 names in your list, and I think you can send up to 10,000 emails a month, which, probably you will not. If you're doing more than that, you're probably raising enough money, and you can just pay for a higher level of MailChimp.
Can you repeat that?
Say what?
Can you repeat that?
Yeah.
MailChimp, MailChimp.com, I think. And it's really good. And that way you'll be able to, you can track certain information beyond name and address and whatever with your people, and it will show you who's opening your emails, who's clicking on whatever links, and so forth. Yeah.
Yeah, and also it has integrations that it can pull information from like Facebook or other like Google Plus, and fill in like details in people's profiles. So you
That's
can,
right.
Yeah.
That's good. And somebody asked
Before you go
about,
on, Nation Builder actually does the same.
okay,
Yes, it is.
it's not free though, right?
No, it's not free. I believe it is a nominal fee, depending on how many names you have in your database.
You didn't hear it from me, but piratebay.sc. That's all I'm going to say.
I guess Civi CRM is where Nation Builder gets that capability. It's built into Civi CRM. So if you're building up this database, you can send out bulk emails. You can schedule them ahead of time. You can have them go into everybody that donated or everybody that is in a phone bank. Or Nation Builder is just a commercial version of Civi CRM where they've done a lot of the work for you. So that's what you're paying for. Is
Okay, good to know.
having somebody use them.
Okay, so there's a couple more here. The limits of a spreadsheet versus a database. We discovered that there's a kind of a split among us about that. I personally felt once you get past about 20 columns in Excel, it becomes really hard to use. David feels you can go up to like 80 columns and still use the spreadsheet. It really just kind of depends on your organization and where you are and what your resources are. But as David said also, I don't know if you were here for it, he said the important thing is to start tracking your data if you're not tracking it. So if you don't have a system right now, just get started, with a spreadsheet. And you cannot learn to use one of these other databases until you're familiar and comfortable with the spreadsheet. So, that'll probably take a few months of this.
And I'm regularly exporting things out of our CRM, out of Salsa, and doing, other functions in Excel that I can't do in the database. The database is nice because in terms of adding, changing, deleting a record, that stuff is really rigid in a good way so that you don't delete all of your data all at once and have real accountability and
Right,
other functions, but you're always sort of going back sometimes between the spreadsheet interface and the CRM as well. So it's nice to be able to learn to sort of do a mock database in Excel because, again, you track your data starting immediately.
Right. And somebody asked about when you're gathering new donors who may or may not be party members and all that, how you integrate them with the state lists. That's really a challenge, which I don't know that any of us have found a good way to do because I don't think there's no way to do it that's not going to be labor intensive. So either somebody is going to have to take a number of hours to do it, or you're going to have to be able to pay somebody to do it. And what the best way is, I'm really not sure. I mean, we have a data website in Green Party New York City where a lot of people come to us, and most of them aren't party members yet. And so they're just kind of sitting there, and they're not integrated, and it really bothers me. But we haven't been able to figure out how to get that done. I mean, I think it would be just such a holy grail if we could have a national database where everybody could get the information they wanted from their state and locality. To have that, you not only need the trust for everybody to share, but you need one system. Everybody has to agree that the name goes in column A, and with greens, that's not easy.
Salsa is not open source.
Right, and so, I mean, so those are some of the challenges that we have. So I think the goal would be, but obviously you're working to have a campaign to bring new people in, so you've got to find some way to keep tracking them. And if you can't get them integrated, then at least in the short term, keep them separate and make sure that you're getting emails or whatever to those people. That's what I've been doing. I call people to come to our Christmas party from that separate list because I'm just trying to get them, more engaged. Sometimes you just have to do that for a while. Yeah.
Do you or David know anyone around the parties who's familiar or skilled with PayPal integration?
What do you mean? Because PayPal is actually fairly, it's not that user-friendly, but it's user-friendly enough. You mean just getting it on your website?
No, we've got that. We're trying to integrate, again, with the reporting system, getting all the proper fields on the invoices and the button, and trying to use PayPal as much as we can to build the database.
Like something better than their own reporting, because it's not good, I agree.
Even to get their reporting to work a little bit. Do you know anybody who's experienced with PayPal? That's the question.
There's alternatives to
Roger
PayPal.
Snyder, who is in the Green Party of New York State, he's out on Long Island. He helped us a little bit get set up with PayPal in my campaign that I'm working on. I don't know how much he knows, but he definitely knows something. He would be a person to start with. I can't think of anyone else offhand.
No, I mean, really, it's if you're the best thing to do with PayPal that I found is if you can find the way to really just export all the data and dump it into Excel and start dealing with it there. That's what I've always found necessary. So.
Again, I know CPCRM has all sorts of problems and it's a lot of work, but they provide some basic integrations with PayPal, and like when a PayPal comes in, it goes into our database, it creates a contribution record, fills in all the information.
And Salsa does that for us as well.
So it's a lot of work to set up a database, a lot of work to maintain a database, a lot of work to integrate databases. The value is enormous, and it's more important than money. At the last day of a campaign, when you're doing get out the vote, you can call up somebody and say, "Hey, I spoke to you 2 weeks ago. How's your dog doing? Is your daughter still in this school? And please show up to vote today," because all that information. We're in Minnesota.
Can we copy your?
Unfortunately, our issue that I wanted to talk to Johan and some other people about which one. So we have lots of databases, and we're trying to figure out now how to standardize, share, figure out is there a really simple template. Maybe we sacrifice for the next 2 years at the national level complexity to get a simple format that everybody uses, and we just agree on to just get something going, and people can still customize locally, but if we can get to that point of sharing everything, then we can start agreeing over time, let's add these 3 fields this year. Let's add this
and
field,
together
or
we
something.
might be able to
Or at least I know that if I give you a copy, you know these 20 fields will always import into your database.
Yeah, we're really close to that.
So yeah.
Even now, which is great.
Yes, sir.
Do you know which state has the biggest database and which one has the smallest one, so that we can figure out the influence?
I'm sure California's is the largest.
With how much?
No question about that. Well, last I heard, is there anybody here from California? Last I heard, they had hundreds of thousands of registered Greens. So, you know, what they do to keep track of them, I honestly have no idea. I know they have some kind of, some regional autonomy and stuff, but they're certainly the largest, the smallest.
Is tied among many states that
Tied among
aren't.
many states, yes.
That aren't affiliated yet.
We have a number of states where there's probably less than half a dozen people holding down the fort really as active. So I can say.
I think Johan mentioned something very cool though.
Yeah.
We don't just have Green Party databases. We keep in our database information about
Yeah,
everybody,
I
about
didn't even
Democrats,
know that.
Republicans, Independents. So